Hello and welcome to another amazing week of Wild Ones podcasts. We are your hosts. My name is Alicia.
And my name is Gillian. This is episode 7 and we are joined today by Chris Shirley. There's a lot to say about Chris Shirley, isn't there? I don't even know really where to start with him. Do you know where to start?
I would say, if I was to try and explain Chris in a nutshell, it would be veteran, mountaineer, had a horrific accident, and he survived, and there is a reason for that. It's like almost like he's meant to be on our planet to change people's lives, because he has got such an incredible story. I likened him earlier to a philanthropist.
Modern day philanthropist.
Yeah,
defo.
Absolutely.
But there is just so much more to him, isn't there? That's the thing. Like, I was trying to explain on an Instagram post, like, everything that he does. And yes, veteran, mountaineer, explorer, adventurer, but he has all of these other things going on as well. He's just like...
If you've ever heard of
the
Hiatus Foundation, that is a charitable foundation that Chris runs. He also runs Tales of Adventure. He also...
He's a graphic designer.
I even forgot about that bit already. He's a graphic designer. He... there's something else. Oh yeah, loads of other charity work. He's a volunteer for Team Rubicon. And
he nearly died.
A horrific mountaineering accident on the Matterhorn. We do go into detail about that. If you're a little bit squeamish, you're probably better off listening rather than watching, because there will be pictures of the injury that he sustained to his leg. And when we say injury, we mean literally it's the most horrific thing, and he's been so incredibly brave, and it's one of the many reasons why we wanted to talk to him. So we hope you enjoy the episode. And we hope that you find Chris as inspiring as we do.
So today we are at the Devereux pub in Temple in London, just off the Strand, and we are joined by Chris Shirley. Hi, Chris.
Hi guys.
Should we shake hands?
Yes.
Be very professional.
Good to meet you. Yes.
We know Chris. So
This is the finest interrogation I've ever been sat through.
As you can see, we've got
we're in a pub, so we've got pop-up
actual drinks, orange juice,
non-alcoholic.
And we are here because this evening Chris is hosting Tales of Adventure talk.
Yes.
Tell us about Tales of Adventure.
I guess the short version is I got given Tales of Adventure 2 years ago when I came back from running across the Atlantic, and I started off by making an absolute balls of it, and then slowly figured out how to make it better every time I made those mistakes.
We've been learning a lot from our mistakes, literally. Our podcast has been, we've been recording for, like, this is just over a month now, and every time we're like, oh, we got that so
What
wrong.
did we learn from this one?
Yeah.
So with Tales of Adventure, you have different speakers coming in each time to talk about their own tales of adventure.
Yeah, so I essentially line up 3 speakers for the night, and then they will kind of figure out what the theme is, obviously before it, and then the themes that come out when I interview the speakers and figure out kind of what things they've got in common, and then we sort of package it up like that, and then the 3 speaker format then runs over a couple of hours over every month.
So taking us back to where you are now with Tales of Adventure, obviously your sort of the bulk of your career was spent in the Royal Marines, and then moving on to that, you went into mountaineering, various other things, but talk us through how you made the leap from being in the Corps to then leaving and where you are now.
So I think I probably left 3 years ago when I was commissioned in the Marines. I came from the Army before that, and I started to realise that actually I wanted more control over my life, as in, like, where I lived and where I was going next with it. I've been in the military for 12 years at that point, and I think slowly you kind of wake up and you realise that there are other things out there. And at the time, medicine was a huge draw for me. So I came out with this intention of going into medicine, becoming a doctor, and slowly the idea of working for a big machine-like organisation, like, again, like the military, but the NHS, just started to lose its appeal. So I did loads of networking in the 12 months it takes to leave. And found myself in the BBC. as a high-risk operations advisor, which sounds incredible. Again, working in a big building in central London with like 8,000 odd people, I think it is off the top of my head, was more than it's cracked up to be, and decided that actually I wanted to leave there and be kind of out, doing the fun stuff again and seeing the world. And I call it the pulse of life. I felt so far away from the pulse of life that I was just sat there in London, basically watching everyone else have fun and kind of feeling like my life was so ticking by.
Not even a cog in the machine, but actually just a really small screw. I'm part of the cog.
Exactly. The slightly blunt part of a cog, which isn't really doing anything, just rolling around in circles, creating paperwork, as you can imagine.
So from public service into finding adventure for yourself.
Yes, yeah. I'd say the transition itself it's a mega stressful time, isn't it? Because you come out of the military and you know what your life is all about. It's essentially the military's there providing you accommodation, there's providing salary, it's providing you food. It literally gives you like an entire life. So you come out of it, and all of a sudden you realise that there's like council tax you've got to pay. There's doctors you've got to register with, which I still don't understand 3 years later. There's all of a sudden there's like extra life. Bits of life
admin,
essentially, which you don't realise when you're in the military. So I think you sort of come out and you're like, oh, actually, it wasn't so bad being in. But you become slowly accustomed to it, and so normal life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I use like inverted commas, normal life. It becomes a bit easier to deal with. But yeah, so I came out of it, found myself in my first kind of salaried job outside the military for the first time since like 12 years, and quickly realised that I didn't really have a huge amount of purpose in my job in the BBC. It was fantastic. I was surrounded by great individuals, but I didn't feel there was much purpose in it. So I decided to leave and work more with charities and the media companies over in those sort of challenging places.
So which charities have you been working with? Because I see loads of stuff on social media. I feel like you can
which charities haven't you worked with?
Just loads of small ones you don't really hear about. So we did. I did 2 months in Mosul in 2017 when the offensive was on to clear ISIS out of the city. Again with a small charity called the Non-Violent Peace Corps, which is a US-based charity. We were delivering food and water supplies, but also keeping an eye to make sure there's there's no extrajudicial killings going on, and it basically involved driving from Erbil to the centre of Mosul while the Iraqi forces supported by the US were basically trying to extract or push ISIS out.
So when you say what was your role specifically within that? Were you security risk and sort of crisis management, or
essentially all rolled up into one? I think the term high risk advisor generally covers everything. It's like you're a medic when you need to be a medic. You stand there and you be kind of security when you need to be security. You hand out water when you need to hand out water. You hand out cigarettes when you hand out cigarettes. You essentially become a bit like mum. Essentially, you're like mum to a team. And you're like, right guys, I don't think this is a good idea, so we're not going to do this. And you essentially kind of keep the team. Your responsibility is to keep the team safe.
High risk mum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that.
That is a good term.
You should hand out cigarettes, though.
Yes.
Yeah, we won't be calling this episode High Risk Mum, but I like
it. Mummy.
Yeah. My God, if they ever hear this, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, Chris, you are like mum."
So, with the Hiatus Foundation, you set that up yourself.
Yes, yeah. So that was a completely different strand to things. So when I left the BBC, I wanted to be closer to that pulse of life, as I kind of mentioned. But one of those things was I never served in Afghanistan when I was in the military. So for 12 years, I ended up just moving units who were all getting ready to go to Afghanistan, and I'd move on. Obviously, your job, your 2 years ends in one unit, and obviously that then goes to Afghanistan. I'd end up mega unlucky in that never end up deploying to Afghanistan. So I kind of felt a bit of a loss, and you lose a lot of friends there and colleagues, and you're left out of a shared experience. So I went to go there as a civilian in 2016 to work with a big charity there. And then went back in 2017 when I heard stories about these kids who are forming sports teams. So like parkour, mountain biking, free running, skiing, literally all the
mountaineering. That's really
mountaineering. Yes, ironically, all these it's incredible sports which you don't really hear about. People just say, isn't Afghanistan terrible? The Taliban are fighting back for power, and it's always the stories of Afghanistan are always categorised with the Taliban and obviously British
hear about
forces.
the people in there.
Exactly, but as you know, as you see in the BAFTAs 2 days ago, a film about skateboarding in Afghanistan won a BAFTA. You know? So now it's slowly emerging. Like, the good news stories are slowly coming out, but it just takes a long time for people to obviously forget the history of. You know, the British military's been there like 3 times in the last couple of 100 years, hasn't it? So it's all you ever know about the country is don't go to Afghanistan because it's, you know, you can never win.
It's interesting that you said that you never served there, because I assumed that you had done.
That's kind of the thing as well.
I guess lots of people must think that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. When you're in the military, so I did 2 tours of Iraq. Around the Arabian Gulf when in 2011 when it was all kicking off, but yeah, I missed out on Afghanistan, so I was left with this deep desire to kind of see the country for myself and kind of understand it better. And when I went there, all I heard, aside from the Taliban attacks, which were happening in the city daily, so you're sat there in your compound, and there are attack reports coming through. And there was one day where we were driving around to film mountain bikers, and we were 5 minutes behind an attack going in, so we had to sort of turn back around and, go back to the guest house. But, all those stories are always, people always make out the bad side of Afghanistan. It's always like the bomb, bullets, death and destruction. And they don't actually realise that there's these young generations of kids, because the average age of Afghanistan is 18 years old for men and women. So you've got kids there who are skateboarding, mountain biking, all those sports I've listed before.
Doing all the things that teenagers...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why, I guess, why we were there in the first place. We were there to almost give those people their freedom back, or a part of their freedom back, and enable girls to go back to school again, and to enable children to live more of a free life rather than being under the Taliban regime. And clearly, although there are parts of Afghanistan that you could not do that in, there are parts that are regenerating and growing and being able to have that little bit more freedom than they did before we were there. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. So, there are parts of it where, it sounds a bit nuts. I ran a marathon around one of the provinces in Afghanistan that holds a marathon every single year now. It's been doing that and a ski race in the Central Highlands have been going on for like 7 or 8 years. So there's these, people say Afghanistan is, it's dominated by the Taliban, but the Taliban affect roughly half of the provinces. And off the top of my head, I think there's 34 provinces, of which are only in half of them. So, it's for a whole country to be, to have that that issue, it's actually only half the country is suffering from, from direct effects from Taliban.
So we had a bit of a chuckle when we talked about mountaineering, which will also explain why I'm in the middle and not Chris. So we do usually like to have a guest in the middle, and Alicia and I either side. But Chris...
You just wanted to sit next to me.
No, I wanted to be in the middle. It's the me show. Chris, it's easier for you to be on the end because you have a leg situation at the moment.
The most horrific injury.
Should I try and get up on the table to kind of show your friends at home without knocking the drinks over?
For those that listen to a podcast rather than watching on YouTube, we will. I don't expect you to put your leg on the table, Chris, but we will put a few photos up, and we're going to ask Chris to explain what happened. If you are slightly nervous about mountaineering accidents, maybe skip this bit until after you've been, and then listen to the podcast afterwards and think how lucky you were that it didn't happen to you.
So 4 months ago, I was on my 3rd attempt at the Matterhorn, which we were aiming for the summit. So we got about 4,000 meters up it. We set up a base camp a bit further down, and the weather pushed us off the summit attempt, so we ended up back at base camp. We to kind of get over our frustration, the mountain beaten us 3 times now. We decided to go and do some climbing. Being an avid photographer, I took my camera out with me and was just hanging around getting photos of the guys climbing who were actually roped up together. I decided not to use a rope because I was finding it easier to move around, just being very careful. Thinking that I was obviously some kind of mountain ninja, not needing a rope, and then woke up.
But you had loads of mountaineering experience, didn't you? So it wasn't like you just
are
gone
kind
and
of a
attempted
mountain
it.
ninja.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to think listening to this that you've just kind of gone half-assed about it. You were an experienced mountaineer.
Yeah, it sounds like very cavalier, and having been in the Marines, where you learn obviously vertical assault training, you do as a 4-5 commando, so you do a lot of like mountaineering and mountain training. Having been back to mountains every year, we've done Mont Blanc, we would aiming for the Matterhorned, so we've got a good mountain experience behind us anyway. And then I woke up in a hospital in Italy, having survived 8 days in a coma, and a medical evacuation from the mountain, having tumbled for 50 meters. So what you can't see at the moment is I've got this external frame on my leg, my right leg, which meant I can continue to kind of move around without 6 centimeters of tibia bone, as in shin bone, being removed after it became infected from an operation.
And they're hoping that bone grows and fuses.
Yes, yeah. So over the space of over the course of 6 months, the bone slowly obviously grows back together, and then becomes as dense as it was before. So you can then start slowly weight bearing onto it. But for the time being, when you've got 6 centimeter gap of missing bone, then essentially the external frame allows it to kind of grow back together. But it's a really innovative design that's been out for 30 years, invented by the Russians, copied by the Americans, and then so it came over to here. And there's that you still don't see many of them around. There's only 300 people per year which have them fitted
in the world.
In the world, yeah. But what it does mean is that essentially is that whereas I could have had the leg amputated because of the deep bone infection that was in there, it means I essentially get to keep my leg, just albeit, I'll have this frame on it for the next 6 months.
Well, that's a small price to pay.
Yes, exactly.
It wasn't just the fact that you could potentially have lost your leg. There was touch and go for several days as to whether you were going to lose your life. Yeah,
so the paramedics in the helicopter said if he makes it to the hospital, then he's probably severely brain damaged. And then the doctors echoed this, who looked at my CAT scans and MRI. They found 3 bleeds on my brain in the different hemispheres of it, and they said we don't know how he's going to come out. He essentially could be a vegetable, he could be normal, we won't know. And then after 8 days I was ready to come out of sedation, and I couldn't talk for the first 2 days, and they actually thought, okay, he's got obviously the worst case scenario going on here. And then slowly it all started to come back in over successive days.
I remember seeing the video footage of you not long after you'd come round from the coma and you were just starting to talk.
Yeah.
I think it was Bags that had shared it on Facebook or something, and the video of you trying to talk, and I was absolutely astounded that I could understand you, albeit you were slurring your speech and you didn't sound like we do now. I was like, this guy nearly died, and now and he's having a conversation with the camera, which is just unreal.
Yeah,
it's like a cat with 9 lives, but that's it. You've used all 9.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, my helmet was absolutely trashed, so I've kept it from for memory's sake. But I can see the head. The helmet was covered in blood. It's an absolute write-off. It's full of cracks everywhere. It's in pieces, being held together by essentially by sellotape.
It's a perfect example of why people should wear it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
Regardless of mountaineering or doing any kind of sport.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I look at the the harness that that I was wearing at the time, the helmet, and the guy showed me as well where I fell, and it was to come away with just a broken leg. When you think, the lower broken leg, not the femurs, not broken, broken arms, or or spinal injuries, or worst case scenario, I had a fractured skull. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, catastrophic bleed. I've got a fractured skull, but this could have been 10 times worse. I was very lucky to be taken off the mountain with with comparatively minor injuries.
Did you have some internal? Or like ribs or organ injuries?
One rib, so it's
I remember a post, maybe it was your girlfriend that posted about. I can't actually remember.
Just the one rib.
That was it. That's crazy.
It like the doctors and nurses. As soon as I came around and was able to kind of understand them, they were saying, Chris, you're really lucky.
Yeah.
So obviously, from day one, I was like, okay, right. I clearly am lucky.
It was 50 meters.
Yes, and I tumbled. So so what I'm not entirely sure what happened because it wipes your memory from the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't imagine you have much.
No, so the short-term memory gets wiped because obviously it's kept in a different part of the brain. But the guys who were with me said they're not too sure if I fell off, I was hit by a rock, which then sent me into a tumble. So.
And who rescued you from the side of the mountain? Which helicopter service do you feel like you partly owe your life to? Have you any idea?
Just the Italian hospital in Aosta.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend has actually said we should go back to Aosta at some point and just go and go and meet all the go and see all the staff who looked after me, because all the nurses and doctors were all fantastic. They all kept on coming in to look after, to come and check on me. And then
did someone have a mobile or a sat phone then to call for assistance?
We had mobiles, because the Matterhorned's quite well service for mobile phone reception, and where we were actually, we're lucky that we had phone reception. But it goes all the way up to the kind of summit. So
that is lucky. I mean, you are lucky, really.
Yes.
And you made such a recovery as well. Actually, it is incredible.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because everyone keeps on saying, the fact I've made a recovery. I came back from the coma, and the first few days, I had no short-term memory. I could stay awake for about half an hour before falling asleep.
Didn't somebody give you a pizza?
Yes, it was when the Rugby World Cup was on, and my friend Dave and Bags literally came in to see me, and they were just like, right, get him pizza, get him coffee. And we sat there watching the rugby, and I'd fall asleep every half an hour and then wake up.
While we're talking about those two, and Annalisa, your girlfriend, you've had the most incredible support. So I think even you would say you can credit some of your recovery to those incredible people around you.
Yes, totally. I guess you don't really kind of understand who's looking out for you until you end up with something like this going on. And it was when I was waking up, people were showing me videos of Christmas Tales of Adventure that was run, whilst you were, the day you came out of the coma, and looked at there's like a packed audience, and my phone was going nuts with messages, and
we were all doing shopping for Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, I gave my phone back to my girlfriend. I was just like, "Can you take this away from me?"
It's too much.
Weird. Yeah, it's too much. Yeah, so kind of over the sort of the few weeks when I got back to the UK and was slowly starting to be able to piece it all together. Is when it kind of hits you. You realise there's loads of people, still loads of people now I need to say thank you to and write letters to, and just.
This is your perfect opportunity.
A lot of them I said already thank you already to, but Bags and Dave, yes, are probably two. Well, Bags, Dave, and my girlfriend Annalisa, are definitely three of the biggest that got me through it.
Yeah, and we're going to get Annalisa on to do her own podcast as well, because she's got an awesome story into herself that doesn't involve your accident. Yes, I'm sure it will come up.
She can share all the funny stories about it as well, because they kept a Shaka for Chris diary, which basically noted down all the funny things that I said. That apparently I woke up from the coma and complained about my Hollywood career, because when you're when you're sedated, your brain obviously continues to work. Essentially live, yeah. So you basically are in a giant dream. I dreamt I was filming like a Hollywood movie or something like that. So I woke up and I kept on trying to pull the oxygen tubes out my mouth and the nutrition lines out my nose and stuff, and all the intravenous lines out, and the nurses were like, right, time to the bed. And that only obviously ties into the weird dream that you're having.
Yeah. Oh God.
But yeah, apparently I woke up, after sedation, was just like, right, Annalisa, my Hollywood career's taken a massive hit. Which is like, Chris, what a charity. Where does this Hollywood career come from?
From philanthropist to Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Look, Hollywood, if you see this, he's available. You just need to give him a chair on the right-hand side.
That's what I would be dreaming of if I was in the coma. Imagine all the things that you'd come out with and your family would be like,
it's so strange, yeah. It's like, I can partly remember the dreams, but it's almost like the dreams then start to merge into like you waking up and regaining consciousness again.
The last time I went under, I woke up asking for a chicken sandwich. I mean, it's not quite Hollywood.
You want what you want.
Yeah. So what
craving.
does the future hold, considering you've been held back a lot by the accident, but you've still got Tales of Adventure going, you've still got the Hiatus Foundation going? How does that look now you have this injury?
Because I can't drive a car, I can't ride a motorbike, I can't, I can just about getting into a taxi and a train okay. I've had to give up a lot of the security consulting, a lot of the expedition stuff I was doing. So for the next 6 months, it's going to be just purely creative stuff. So I studied graphic design before joining the army, and that's now kind of getting me through everything. Yeah. So
what have you called the?
House of Hiatus.
House of Hiatus.
A working name. Yeah, it's my creative consultancy for people doing adventure stuff. But what I can do now.
It's all really cool logos though, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. That's pretty much a product of just sitting on my ass all day in the living room, watching daytime TV, and then also making designs out of it as well. So that's maybe one of the good things that came out of it. But I guess probably the biggest thing that I'm looking to do next is summit Mount Everest with the first ever team of Afghan Mountaineers, because at the moment no Afghan Mountaineers, male or female, have ever stood on the top of Everest. So.
When are you looking to do that then?
I say 2 years. I'm looking down at the contraption that's strapped to my leg, hoping that it's not hearing me. But 2 years time,
so
depending on
2022.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so depending on funding, it depends on obviously. Politicians helping us to get access, or because the Afghan passport is a challenge in itself, as in to get over to Nepal to do the training, or other countries to do the training. There's a 7,500 meter mountain in Afghanistan, which we're hoping to summit as the beat up mountain for Everest. So essentially, you get that ticked off, then it keeps the Nepali government happy that you've obviously got a team of mountaineers that know how to handle like that, very high altitudes.
Yeah, any chance of getting sort of the Gurkha Welfare Trust involved so that they could kind of give you a helping hand in the back door, come on.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I think if I can get the Afghan embassy and the Nepali embassy together to obviously over some kind of like dinner party, then I'd be like, oh yeah, guys, as well.
It's like your ideal Ferrero Rocher dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If I can just get the two ambassadors together and just say, like whisper in their ear, like Afghans in Everest. And
I nearly died. Let me in.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just give me the sympathy vote for God's sake.
Turn up with that on your leg.
Yeah.
You are Team Rubicon Grey shirt as well.
Yes, yeah. So like yourselves, I joined Team Rubicon 3 years ago when I finished at when I left the military and kind of when I was at the BBC. Again, it was the opportunity to go continue obviously the service, doing good things. That purpose that I mentioned earlier, continues up.
Who introduced you to Team Rubicon? How did you find out about it?
I found it on Facebook, actually, believe it or not. Yeah, so this was when Team Rubicon was like 2 or 3 people. Yeah. Like the UK version, and Tim, who's like one of the most original, TI UK grey shirts. Him and I went to Nepal with a couple of other guys, and it was the after earthquake deployment, so the post earthquake deployment. We went and built the earthquake resistant shelters.
Yeah, they've just had a team before go out as well, haven't they, to Nepal? They deployed on Sunday.
Yes, they did. Yeah. So I think they're going to the same area that we went to.
Up there, isn't it?
Yeah, so we ended up in the epicenter of the earthquake and just living there in the communities, literally in a tent for 2 weeks, in a sleeping bag, and it was as soon as I left the BBC that I realised I made the right decision to to get out and do the thing with more purpose, which then sparks other conversations. It just kind of opens up many doors, but you just got to have the confidence to to almost obviously commit to it and just go, right, I haven't got a plan for this, but something will figure itself out.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how we live our lives as well.
Winging it. Yeah. See what happens. I was going to ask you said about wanting to be a doctor or thinking about going into that. You went to Plymouth University, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
What did you study?
The Art and Design College, so I studied graphic design.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say, I did science.
I'm not from any kind of science background at all. I haven't got any doctors or kind of medical staff in my family either. So I think I'm a bit of the black sheep of the family. Just deciding to go into the military and then go into medicine and go into the charity stage.
But you can combine all of those things that you love now, which is like the best thing. You can do, kind of like emergency medicine, and you can climb mountains, and you can work for charities and volunteer and tick all the boxes. You just need to get some recovery time in for you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think one of the things I found out recently was that where, as opposed to say you go back 2 or 3 generations, if you were say if you left school as a librarian or you left as a bus driver or whatever your job was, that was your job for life, wasn't it? Your job for life, you follow the same path as your parents. You got married, you'd have children, you'd retire, and you'd die essentially. But what they're thinking now is that because obviously the advances of medical technology, we've got longer and longer lifespans. They reckon you've now got, I think, 2, 3 or 4 careers inside of you. Yeah. So they actually, so you could start off, being a bus driver, and then you study towards something else.
Yeah, the average person has 8 jobs in their life or something like that.
Really?
Which actually, compared to that 1 or 2, so maybe 3 careers, but in between, people kind of are more accepting of the fact that you can have a gap in your CV where you go travelling as an adult.
And this has really changed just over one generation as well, because it's like my parents and most people's parents I know are the generation that just had one job.
Yes, exactly.
My mum worked for HSBC, and before it was taken over, it was Midland Bank. She started working for them at 16 and she retired at 65.
Yeah.
And my dad was the same ages, joined Devonport Dockyard in Plymouth as a shipwright when he was 16 and left at 65, 66, up whatever role he was in. And that was their lives.
You say to our kids now, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd actually like one of my sons to say, I want to do everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't want them to say this job, unless it's something really specific that they need to have that training in. I genuinely am of the firm belief that if it's not for you and you don't feel comfortable doing it, move on, because life's so short.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I studied graphic design at university, and I got to my 3rd year, the BA year, as in the degree year, and it's almost like I run out of steam. I just woke up one day and I was like,
wow, this is
I've had enough of this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Literally walked into my lectures that day and was just like, I'm done, thanks. Yeah. And then 3 months later, I went into the Army Careers Office and ended up at Winchester, in basic training.
Did you not finish at uni then?
No, I didn't. No.
You didn't stay as an officer in the Army?
No, I didn't. No. Okay. I went in. As a private soldier, did 6 years. Got to the heady ranks of corporal, and then decided that I wanted to transfer to the Marines. Failed my first intake 1 year, went back and cried the hell into my bed that night. And, thought, well, it wasn't meant to be. And then slowly decided that I'd have another crack a year later, even though the Army was saying, "Come, when it commissioned into the Army, it could be there in Sandhurst in like 3 months." And at that point, I'd already decided that I was like, no, I need to wait a year and go for the Marines again. At least if they turn me down twice, I know it's not meant to be.
Yeah.
Waited another year. Was successful on that second time round and ended up in the Marines for 6 years. So I think I'm kind of one of those kind of few examples that spends equal time as a soldier and an officer. So
best of both worlds. Yeah.
Well, when people say, "Oh, well, you as an officer, you don't really know what it's like to do real work." And like, well, actually, half my career is spent doing real work as a soldier, so they're like,
exactly.
Like,
and any bootlegs listening would be like, well, you upgraded anyway. So
exactly. We spoke about on our first podcast. I was the same. I went to Plymouth Marjons, but as part of Exeter University, but in Plymouth.
Yeah.
And I was the same. I didn't finish my degree because after however much time it was, I literally just walked in one day and was like, no,
yes.
I did actually don't want to do this. I
Yeah,
did 10 months of college and was like, this is just not for me. And I packed about 6 bags and moved to Tenerife for 2 years.
Yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? You have to go through, whilst you may have a huge interest in something, until you put yourself, in the arena and you actually, study it and you commit financially to it or time to it, then you don't really know how you're going to react.
And actually, 18 is such a young age to expect someone to know what they want to do. Because even now, like you said, ask a child what they want to be when they grow up. I still feel like I haven't grown up. Like, if somebody said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'd be like, "I don't know."
You're meant to say, "I want to be a podcaster."
Oh yeah, I want to be
a YouTuber
with Alicia Emerson Thomas. But no, I still feel now like, am I growing up?
No,
I'm pretty sure Spider-Man or Optimus Prime can still be an answer at 36.
Why not?
It was my answer until I was about 17.
Actually, no, Spider-Man's taken. My 3-year-old thinks it's Spider-Man. Sorry, done.
I'd like to be She-Ra.
Yeah. So the last question for me, Chris, which is a sensitive subject, but it's something that we cover off every week with our guests, is how you handle your mental health and how you stay okay, considering you've gone from being 100% active to being really inactive.
Yeah, it's a really good question because I would say like a lot of veterans, you become almost hooked on physical exercise. It becomes like your everything, because it's a way to it burns cortisol, the stress hormone. It comes up for physical training. It can become very addicted to fitness. So when I had this injury, I couldn't go out and run or go sea swimming or go and do Brazilian jiu-jitsu or fun stuff like that. I had to really look deep and figure out other ways that I could actually get my kicks, essentially. But I think for me, it's like finding a routine again, because I was in a hospital bed. I was in hospital for 2.5 months, of which 2 weeks were spent horizontal in, having the frame fitted, and 2 operations, and half it's on morphine, and it left me a lot of time to do soul searching and figure out, okay, this is, whilst fitness and challenges and stuff may be great fun now, it's it's not a it can't be a life strategy. That you've got to find other things to make you happy, and I think I found actually routines really helped me through the hardest times of the hospital time. It's helped me in the past with ocean rowing, with with runs, or with other big sort of challenges. But I think just having enough purpose, knowing that you're kind of helping other people, is something that can get you through the hardest times. When I left the Marines, I went through you do that 1 year of transition. I had fucking knows how many coffees with people in finance, in management consulting, in charities, in all kinds of sectors. And you walk in there and you have a chat for 10 minutes and you're just like, this is such a waste of time.
Yeah.
But at least I know I don't want to be someone in finance or management consultancy.
Don't want to be a project manager.
Exactly, exactly. I was like, damn, I've wasted that time on Prince 2 for nothing. But they are as useful. Those experiences are useful because essentially, if you can't see yourself being a project manager or in finance or in charities or something like that, then you're just going to be wasting your time going into those sectors, and you won't be a good fit. You'll hate it. If you're mortgaged up to the eyeballs, for example, and you're putting yourself through that pressure, then I think it's going to have a massively detrimental health issue on your mental health, isn't it? So
it's more about being aware or self-aware of what works for you, and not putting too much pressure on yourself and thinking, right, small goals, get there, set some future aspirations up, and then channel towards them. Yeah,
totally. I mean, one of the things, one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was a US Marine officer who was kind of, he was at the company 2IC. He used to, like, Chris, start a journal. And we deployed on ship. This is 2011 during the Arab Spring. And so literally I just started, writing a journal. It was weird at first. And I was like, this literally feels like the Princess Diaries. I was like, what do I write about? Do I write about boys, or I wasn't sure. I was on a ship with like 200 Marines, and I was like, what do I write about?
The lads stink today.
Lads think I'm an idiot again. But it sounds counterintuitive, but what I found was that just writing this stuff down, it's super cathartic. I was like, I wish I'd figured it out sooner, but just writing it down, and then more importantly, going back to it like weeks or months or even years later, when you go back and you go, oh shit, I was really immature as like a 25-year-old.
Well, it's bad enough we've talked about this before, but it's bad enough now they have Facebook memories.
Yeah, exactly.
And it shows you what you put on your Facebook status like 12 years ago, and I'm like, I literally see them and I'm like, oh my god, I'm deleting it so it doesn't come up again. I don't even want to see that again.
Yeah.
I'm like, never again am I seeing that.
It's almost like a private Facebook memory, where you can look back and you go, well, I'm glad I never said that, or I'm glad I didn't do this. And it's what has helped me to realise is that whilst times and we're on ship during the Arab Spring, and there's loads of misinformation going on, and obviously you're literally living shoulder to shoulder with your lads, and you've got no space to yourself. So even just finding somewhere quiet to sit there and write in a journal, and again, like, blokes will take the piss out of you for literally doing anything like it. I find it make cathartic
as well, haven't you? Because you've had a journal since then as well.
Yeah,
so
totally.
That works for you. My mum, I only recently found out, has a life diary.
Someone still even saying it, doesn't it?
It's like weird. But basically, every day she has a diary like people do, and she writes what she did that day in the diary. But at the end of the year, she then gets her life diary out, and she'll just do a year's page, and on that year's page she'll just copy across
like
the main things. So she's literally got this book of like every year of her life, like the main things that happened in that year, that she copies across from her.
I know a lot of people do gratitude journaling as well, and I like the idea of that, but I'm just a bit of a misery arse sometimes. Like, God, have I really got to find something cheerful to be grateful for today?
I think
yes, I must.
Doing it every day would be like, I couldn't even manage that, but doing it every week, you know, and where it's just a case of, you know, switching your phone off, which is terribly hard, and then just sit there and literally just writing, and it sounds ridiculous, just literally keep on writing, and then your brain literally switches into, you know,
writer mode,
debrief mode, and you're just like, oh, and then this was rubbish, and this was rubbish, and the food was rubbish, and then
everything was
rubbish. And all of a sudden you're just like, I feel really good now, actually.
So we're going to get to feature in your journal for this week, did a podcast.
Exactly.
And speaking of podcasts, do you have your own podcast? Is it as great as this?
No, it's nowhere near as professional setup as yours. Like, it's literally one little box, I think the size of this, which I've yet to figure out how to use. I've not actually interviewed anyone yet. I was just, at some point, I was like, well, I've got all these cool people who come into Tales of Adventure Talks. It would be remiss of me not to get some
record it. Out. And that was the thing with us. We didn't start the podcast because we want like fame or fortune or to meet like famous people or anything like that, which I do think is probably what some people go into doing this kind of thing, is all having a YouTube channel or anything. We just thought, do you know what, we know some really awesome people.
We just keep meeting all these cool people. And you chat when you're on a journey with them in the car or on the train, or you go to like Team Rubicon events, you're like, your story needs to be told. But they don't want to write a book. They're not going to get on the telly. We're like, we just start a podcast, shall we? And
exactly,
you know what? You were part of a catalyst for this podcast.
You were,
so for that, thank you. Yes.
How to do it badly by falling off mountains.
So Alicia and I have only met last summer at Team Rubicon.
Really?
But when
we're not sisters.
But we both live in Plymouth. We literally live like less than 10 minutes away from each other. We have so much in common. We're actually best friends. And it was probably then that we said, like, let's do something. And it's bubbled and bubbled. And then we came to a Tales of Adventure, didn't we? And we talked
when
about
Janie
it more.
was talking, Janie McGann.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just kind of carried on from there, hasn't it?
We went out after Janie had done her talk. We sat downstairs with Rich Sharp, for those listening, CEO of Team Rubicon, and then we all went out for a drink somewhere else, and literally started a WhatsApp group with Janie the next day and went, why don't we start a podcast? But Janie hasn't been able to be involved because she's just so busy travelling the world and doing really exciting things.
Well, the thing is, unfortunately, is that we both live in Plymouth. So it's easy.
Did you just say unfortunately? She doesn't mean that.
That'll explain the pointy heads, isn't it? That's
Unfortunately, in the sense that I think
we're very really cut off from the rest of the world.
We are cut off, and like I think originally you okay?
Just inhaling, guys.
We really wanted to have Janie involved more with this as well, didn't we? But it's just we're both in Plymouth, and we record so many podcasts in Plymouth. Well, we do one a week now. One a week. Actually, probably going to be more.
But then we get to travel to London and come and catch up with people.
Yeah, exactly. Come and hang out in like 18th century pubs.
So because we've got the green screen up, people can't actually see, but we are in a beautiful pub.
So if you want to find out more about anything that we've talked about today, we're going to put all of the links up on the show notes for this. So from whichever platform you're listening to, you'll be able to find links to the Hiatus Foundation. You'll be able to find links to Tales of Adventure. To the graphic design business that you've set up, even a link to the Devereux if you want to visit the pub in which we did this recording.
Great pub.
We'll put links up, so have a look. And for those that are squeamish that are listening, don't go over to YouTube if you don't want to see gross pictures of Chris's
leg. We'll put pictures of legs.
The surgeon took all those photos when I was fully out of it, so I've got him to thank for it.
Yeah.
Nice. Maybe he put them in his own journal.
It's like, I had this really stupid guy come in today, cut his leg.
Take a photo, keep that
fell off a mountain, for God's sake.
Thank you so so much for letting us do a
Oh, you're welcome, guys.
podcast.
Cheers. Sounds like my business, doesn't it? I was like, cheers, guys.
Thank you.
So that was episode 7 of Wild Ones podcast. We hope you enjoyed that one. That was Chris Shirley, and we recorded that in the Devereux pub in London because, as we probably said in the podcast, we were there for Tales of Adventure, which Chris organises as part of the Hiatus Foundation. Did you have a good time?
I love the Devereux. Devereux, thank you so much for hosting us. You were a fantastic host, as were the Tales of Adventure team. So great evening, and if you're unsure about what we're waffling on about, check out Tales of Adventure, have a look on Facebook and you'll learn all about it, and perhaps we'll see you there at the next one. We've got some other thank yous to do too.
Yes, thank you to Red Rock, as always, for the branded apparel. If you're watching on YouTube, we are doing some funky movements right now. And we actually just popped into Red Rock as well, haven't we? And had a little meeting, so there will be things coming soon.
Yes, our patrons, we have just organised for your gifts to be made, which I know we've kept you waiting for 4 weeks, but hey, they will be worth it. So
good things come to those who wait.
Yeah, if you are unaware of what patrons are, we have a site called Patreon. If you look up Patreon on Google or whatever your preferred search engine may be, and type in Wild Ones Podcast, it is where you can donate to help us as little as $1 a month. It is in dollars. And that money goes towards hosting our podcast, hosting the website, the platforms, and hopefully as we build and we get stronger and we get more and more listeners, we will be able to start, instead of self-funding, like literally the fuel to London is breaking me. Why is fuel so expensive?
Yeah, anyway, we digress. Thank you very much, Red Rock, for the hoodies, the t-shirts, and all the things that are coming very soon, which is very exciting. Thank you to Plymouth Armed Forces Awards. I completely forgot what they were called then. Thanks, though. Mitch and Lee, Alicia, and producer Pete are going to be seeing Mitch and Lee this evening to talk about a few things.
Yes.
So lots of exciting stuff coming regarding Plymouth Armed Forces Awards as well. And thank you to our patrons.
Yeah, thank you, patrons.
We do have some.
We desperately do need your help, though. I know I've just said it, but there is so much to pay for. We are desperate to bring you more and more stories from really cool people. And I recently explained it to somebody that there are so many people out there who should write a book but couldn't or won't. There are so many people out there who don't have a platform like television or radio to share their stories. But yesterday, somebody tweeted me, actually, and this is relevant. Somebody tweeted me to say thank you for a recommendation. They'd reached out to me for some mental health support for a friend of theirs who is a Met police officer. My go-to is always Rock to Recovery because they are an incredible charity who look after the mental health, specifically PTSD and complex PTSD of veterans and serving military. And they've also extended now to blue light services, in particular police officers. As an ex-police officer, I've used them. I also have family members that have used them, and they are just an incredible charity. And I recommended them. They have seen the person who I gave their details to, and he has literally said that he's gone from an 8 to a 2 in terms of stress and anxiety after one appointment with them.
That's incredible.
And I'm just so pleased that I could make that one recommendation to that one person who saw my account on Twitter, reached out, and it literally, they are saving lives and changing lives. So special mention this week to Rock to Recovery, I think. And we want to be able to continue to spread this message and interview those incredible people out there so that if just one person listens to one episode that can change their lives or help them in some way, we are doing the right thing.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh, I'm so proud of you too.
And we shouldn't say too much, but we've got some exciting things coming up with Rock to Recovery, haven't we?
We've got some fundraising things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not say anything else.
No, there's quite a few events that we're taking part in, hopefully to fundraise. So, or as always, show notes will be on our website, on Patreon, and on the podcast and YouTube. So if you want to get involved, if you want to help us support other people, just keep an eye out. Loads of things to come. Check out all the socials.
Check us out. And what we should say is next week's episode 8, we have pre-recorded. And and it was a special one because we recorded this one in London. We didn't sleep in the van for this one, actually. We stayed in a hotel, and it was at the Royal Society of Medicine. And that's coming next week, episode 8. And as always, I think what we've agreed from now on is that the podcast will go out on Wednesday and the YouTube video will go out on Thursday. So look out for that one next week.
Yeah, it's a story that's close to our hearts. It's another charity, and it is the charity that supported me when I nearly lost my eldest son. So definitely worth a listen. And they have World Encephalitis Day coming up, and we would plead for all of you to listen to that and get involved, even if it's that you only wear a red t-shirt on the 22nd of February.
Yeah, that's a bit of a special episode, isn't it, for us, and also just because the person that we're speaking to is not our usual kind of guest. It's the CEO. We'll put it out there. It's the CEO of the Encephalitis Society. And yeah, we spoke to her and it was really, really good.
Yeah.
So that's going to be with you next week.
Thank you so much for listening. We love you all, and make sure if you've missed any episodes, catch up.
Thank you.